Hey everybody, my name is Stefan Kraus from Byte the Bytes, and in this tutorial video we are going to create a pretty nice island, as you can see here on this image, completely in World Creator. From shape to material to objects and rendering. Okay, let's get started. Have fun and enjoy. Okay, so let's go for the shape now. This is the basic terrain that you will see when you run World Creator, and I'm going to create a nice island shape without materials, without objects, within the next minutes. I'm not going to explain everything in detail, but you can see what kind of filters I'm going to add and what I'm going to do with the base terrain shape to adapt it, and then I'm going to show you some different variations as well. Okay, so let's go. The first one, I'm going here to terrain. I'm changing the shape type from classic to mountain range, and now I could here just quickly go through all these possible shape styles until I find something which might be of interest. So this looks not that bad. I will keep with that. Next, because I want to see the contours a little bit better, I'm going to add a material here called contours and get rid of that one here. Now I'm going to add a filter which is called border blend. This is because I want to get rid of the borders, because this island should look like an island in an open, wide open ocean. If I'm choosing my water, you would see how that would look like. And now what I can see here is that we have very flat areas, right? So I don't want that actually. So I'm going to adjust a little bit that border blending here until we get some kind of noise on the surface ground. So switching back here, adapting it a little bit until I'm quite happy with that. So I think that's okay. Now I'm going to add a filter for the underground basically. So what I want to make is I want to make the underground here, the underwater area, to be more rock-like. So therefore we have some arid filters for which I can go through here. Rock cliffs or these ones here, sharp and whatever. I think the plateaus look pretty good because they're creating these rock styles that look like a little bit underwater. But I want to make sure, or let's say the question is, how do I tell World Creator to only apply that filter below the sea level? So don't apply it here on top of the mountain, but everything below the sea level. And that can be done by adding a distribution to it. So I'm going to add a distribution which is called sea level here. And if I disable that water system now, you'll be able to see what it is affecting directly. So if I enable the heat map, you can see that the sea level is around here, and it goes 0 and 0, so it means it starts at a 0 point, but it goes below 50 and 50%. So this is a blending value basically that you can do upward or even downward, right? So you can see that if I'm enabling that one and my water, to see what's going to happen, everything below that shoreline is being now used, that filter. Okay, so make this a bit more clear. I'm going to set this value to 0 and this here to a large negative value here too, disabling the heat map, and we can see clearly the difference. Now each time I'm changing something here in that filter, like I could reduce the strength, you can see that only everything below the sea level is going to change here. Okay, so the next one is I'd like to have a shoreline, which means I'd like to have a beach and all that actually belongs to an island, right? So I need to have a bit more control around these the shoreline where the sea level actually marks the shoreline. So we have a filter for that. Click here plus, go on effects, and select the shore filter like this. Now you already can see it does something interesting, right? Let's switch to the shape design mode, then you can clearly see it a little bit better. So I have some sliders here. So for example, I could make it looking like this. I give it control over that. I can do it like that here. It gives me a lot of control over everything above the sea level and also for everything below the sea level, right? So that way I have a bunch of control settings that I can use to make something pretty nice out of it. And I still have a shore-like looking, a beach-like looking terrain, okay? Now, let me quickly adjust that. I'm going to switch it back. Let me push this mode here. I'm going to switch back to the original values. And let me see. I like to add a little bit. I don't want to have huge and larger elevations above the island, right? So if I put my mannequin down here, you'll see how that would look like. So that would be a huge mountain. Actually, not that huge, but it looks like a larger mountain here on an island, which is not really typical for such small islands, right? So we need to adjust that a little bit here until we get something that looks a bit more realistic. I think regarding height, that could be already okay for this kind of island. So it's like a Maldives or something like that. It's not too high basically, right? So let's do something like this. Yeah, let's stick with that one. And of course, it doesn't look that good because you can see these streaks and lines and all that. I mean, that will change when we're adding more filters. But for now, we can control it by having a noise strength here. So for example, if I'm increasing my noise strength down here and using a noise scale, and this is what is going to happen. I'm adding some stuff on top of it, just to make it look a bit more interesting to the entire system, right? So here we can even control this. This is also interesting here. We can control a little bit how far it goes into it. I will keep it. I think that's okay. We can leave this now. Let me check. Elevation looks good so far. I think that's okay. And the really cool thing about when using the shore or when using the sea level is that these two things, so the distribution called sea level and the effect and the filter shore, they are directly bound to the sea level of the ocean. So if I'm moving that, you can see the terrain adapts automatically. Okay. Now, as you can see here, we got some rocks here around the beach. That's because the rocky plateaus have a sea level, but the sea level is directly set to 0 here. So we need to reduce that a little bit until we get to a point like maybe -12 and do a blending a little bit upwards. That way we're getting rid of the rocks exactly at the beach line, but we make sure that we have rock parts here down below the sea level basically. Okay, now this looks like a beach already, but there's some stuff that we're still missing. We need sand, we need mud, we need debris and all that stuff that is basically on the ground here, right? So the best we can do for now is, for example, if we first add a little bit kind of mud. So we go here to the sediment, adding mud, and for the mud, again, make sure that we're using it below the sea level. So we just copy paste that sea level distribution and put that here to the mud. You can do that by holding on your keyboard the left control key and just drag it up here. Now we got some mud below and you can see the difference, how that would look like. And of course, you could adjust a little bit the strength here too, which I'm going to do slightly until I think it looks good. And now what I want to do additionally is I'd like to have a bit more scattering things. So I would like to add rocks and all that. And for that we have a really nice filter. I mean, I could use a simulation, but the simulation in this case would be a little bit too much. So I'm going to use a scatter filter. That's called, where is it? Here we got the scatter filter, so you are aware that there's a scatter filter. We also want to make sure that there's no scattering on the island directly, but on the below the sea level. So I'm going to use again here the sea level distribution and put that for the scatter too. And now let's adjust the scatter thing here, because this is really cool. Look at this, what I could do with that. If I enable the water, it looks even better, I think. So we could do a lot of stuff with this one. It's really, really cool. So you could add small scatters, you can add and scatter everything full with it, right? You could change the elevation of those scatters. With these ones, you can scatter larger rocks, break the terrain entirely, if you're doing it like this, for example. By the way, you can also select anything else like spheres. You could do plates, you could do small spheres, small simple stuff, and all that. You can even load in your own custom texture if you select custom here, and use that for the scatter shape, basically. Okay, now let me check if we can find something that looks pretty good here. Scale range, sizes, so we need some smaller ones, we want to have some larger ones, something like that here. I think that's okay. It's good enough for what we're planning to do. Now let's check how the ocean would look like. Looks pretty good so far. And now I'm going to add another filter, which is called Kubahara, and that will create some more plates around here. So that's my intention with it. So I'm going to add the Kubahara effect. You see what's how it really affects the terrain. I'm going to make sure again that it's below the sea level only. Now we get something really cool here, right? That's really nice. And I like to only have it applied a little bit more only on deeper regions, right? So I think that, or let's say something like, let me try something just to see if how that would look like if you adapt it a little bit like this. So the idea is, along the beach we have more like this cliff-like looking things, and below we don't have that. So actually it looks pretty good. I think it's really nice, and we could adjust that a little bit to have sharp edges along the beach line here. Could end up in something really cool. Yeah, that's good so far. Okay, let's keep that. It's not too bad. And let me check a little bit here the water level. This looks really nice. Yeah, incredible. Yeah, that looks great. And now I'm going to add some sand to this terrain. So I'm going to add a simulation. It is called sand. So I just put that here on top of it, and I'm going to adjust a little bit the amount of sand. So I don't want to have too much sand. Let's make something like 1.40 meters in thickness. And to show you how that would look like with the sand, I'm going to adjust a few things here with the slope. So we make sure that we have sand in these areas here. So, and you can see that automatically, and that's really cool. We have some random beaches right here. Like this could be like a sand beach going down. We have sand down here. We have sand along the beach line. We have sand on on the underground here as well. That really breaks up things really neat. And we could add a lot more sand to it and control that a little bit. How much sand we really want to have on our beach line, right? So that's really cool. Let me check regarding the mud here a little bit. We could slightly adjust that a bit too. I like these lines here, if you can see that. Let me just check if we could do that a little bit better. Wouldn't be too bad. I think that's okay. And now we have a really nice beach line here. You see that? If you go here, if this is a mannequin, it goes into the water. Please ignore that. That foam for our water. Our water system is not that good yet, but we're working on it, and once finished, you have a real ocean-like look. So this is still work in progress. Okay, now if your mannequin goes into the water, you can see it goes in, goes in, goes in, swimming, swimming, going out. Small island, amazing, a lot of sand. That's exactly what we wanted. Okay, so this looks pretty nice actually. I like it. I'd like to try a little bit around with wait, let me check this. I don't like this one here. So we need to make sure that the scatter here we can control, by the way, also the scatter, how the objects that are actually scattered here, and what kind of detail you can do that. So if you're moving the higher level steps, you can see the scatter loses a little bit of detail, and that's not too bad. Let me check the elevations here a little bit. So we got something like this, which also looks pretty amazing. I think I need to adjust that scatter thing here a little bit because I don't want to have too large rocks. I think we need a bit more like these ones here. So let's just add a few more. I think that looks good. And maybe regarding sand, a little bit less of sand wouldn't be that bad. Maybe, yeah, that looks great. Okay, now this is, yeah, that's amazing. How that would look like if I'm moving up the sea level. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so by the way, of course, if an island, I mean, this is 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer in total, right? So I mean, that's one of those spots that are pretty difficult when designing environments and terrains, from my point of view, actually, because I'm not an environment artist, but somehow I learned it during the development of Web Creator. However, it's not that easy to make it looking real because in many cases, like for example, if you're increasing the sea level, it just means that you would have, you would have deeper areas, and the island would grow into like straight upward, right? So you have a completely different island in that case. It's more like a rock island. It would look, and it basically would look like this, okay? But if you're having an island with a large beach, and that beach is not really deep and all that, then your sea level, of course, for that beach, specifically for that island or for that area, wouldn't be too high. So, in order to have a flat area of a sandy beach, don't increase the sea level too much, so you can see what's below the water. It would look like this, for example. And this will look, I mean, we will add a lot more content here. So there's coming a lot more stuff when we're adding the objects and filling it up with rocks and everything else like that. We could do that, of course, with additional scatters and all that thing. But I think that's a quite realistic look already, because we have a lot of sand here. It's a small island. We got some nice shorelines here, nice rocks underground, and these really look like as if we could add some corals here, and some underwater plants and all that stuff, and maybe a nice shark as well, would just fit pretty well here into the water, I guess. A great white. Okay, now what I first want to try next is I'd like to add a little bit erosion, just to see how that would look like. So I'm going here to filters, going to, let me check which ones would make sense. The hydraulic sediment looks not bad. We have the sediment flows. These look quite good. I love these streaks here. I love that one here, but I think it's a bit too much for that kind of sedimentation. So let me check the thin flows. Now that gives more. Now this is exactly what I'm talking about. The wrong erosions with the wrong settings make your terrain look like as if you would view it from a very high orbit. Like, so this is really designed. If it's looking realistic, you really need the good filters and the proper settings. Here with the white flows. Now these look pretty cool here. I think even better than these sediment flows, to be honest. And I'm not even sure if we should use the erosions here, because still, if I'm down at the surface level, you see that? If an island would be eroded like this, it would mean that these would be real rocks, okay? So it doesn't make any sense to have the erosion applied at this locations, I guess. So I'm going to use the sea level again here, the sea level distribution. Make sure that we just eroded somewhere below the sea level. So we're starting maybe somewhere here. Maybe a heat map so we can see that a little bit better. So we are starting to erode it like that. And I think that's enough. It's not changing much, but it gives some interesting details along some areas here. You can see here these spots, for example, which is pretty good. Let me check if we play a little bit with the erosions here, could make it a bit more interesting. Let me check that. Now I think we can go with the original values. I think that's okay. Yeah, we will keep the default values. I think that's just fine. It does a good job and looks good. Okay, now the next thing that might be done, because I still think it's a bit too rocky here. You know, that's you have all these things, and if you ever been at an island or at a Maldives or something like that, you don't have that really. I mean, not for islands that don't have much of elevation. Okay, so one thing we should consider about doing is probably taking out of the noise parts here. So we could do this if we add a filter called denoise. And again, we need to make sure that it's not denoising anything below the sea level. So we're doing exactly the opposite. We're copy paste that sea level here and put that to the denoise. And for that one, we could either one option you could do is using an invert effect. So with denoise basically anything above the sea level, or if you just adjust this value here, so we tell the system denoise everything exactly the shoreline, along the shoreline, go upwards to a maximum, no blending upwards because we don't need that upwards, right? And now if I'm going to change that here, you can see that we are actually just denoising these parts here. And that's really good. So I want to denoise that, and I'm going to adapt a little bit the sea level here, because I think we should even start a little bit in upper regions here. Let me check that. Like these regions, I think we should start with these regions here, somewhere here, around here, with a little bit of blending downwards. So I'm going to make sure that we have it covered pretty good. Yeah. And now let's adjust a few of these values here too. So just slightly denoise it. Don't denoise everything, but just a very, let's make it quite smooth here. I think that's good enough. Yeah, that's good enough. Of course, now if you don't want to denoise anything here or everything here, you could, for example, if you want to keep it procedural, because this is what our heat map would actually be, you could also add here a, for example, you could add a noise and call it like, I don't know, let's call it simple here. The simplex, add an effect like contrast, make it up, and then use that simplex slider here to denoise just specific parts on that island. And then you can see what's happening here. So we have denoised a few things here, but not everything. So we still have some bumpy areas, but a lot of denoise values too. So I mean, you could use the amplitude slider of the simplex here to mark out, okay, they'll make it like everything is washed off. Keep some parts that might be smaller rocks or whatever, and yeah, give it a bit more realistic look. You could also use a slope if you don't want to denoise slopes, for example. That could also be an option to do so, right? And of course, this kind of techniques using noises could also be used for the scatter, or for the shoreline, or for the plateaus, because that way you could break a little bit up the terrain, make things a bit more rocky at here parts and there and all that stuff. But this is, you know, this is really, I mean, this is a personal taste. In my opinion, I really just want to create a tropical island with lots of sand, some vegetation, and a really nice beach areas here, and some stuff here, and with corals and some sharks in the sea. Okay, so I think we can go with this one. Now the question would be like, okay, how do we add the materials and all this stuff? I'm going to handle that in the next part. And also with the objects, so like adding rocks or something like that, like hills and rocks, you know, that are probably a little bit larger. We will do that with objects, because those should be done actually with real assets. If you're doing games or something like that, then those assets would be used to mark up things where the collisions could be possible, or you could climb up whatever mountain parts and all that. But for the terrain shape itself, I think that's a pretty good starting point for our island. And now I'd like to show you something beside that, what is now about the terrain itself here. So as you can see here, we have chosen the mountain range, and now each time I'm changing this one, I'm creating an entire new island using it completely procedural, and it just does everything that I've set up here automatically because of the dependency of the sea, of the how's it called, the sea level and the shoreline, right? So that's really neat, and with that you can create tons. Oh, that looks amazing. I think I will just keep that one for the next for the next part regarding the materials. Looks great. Which one is it? This is number 35. Looks great. Okay, remember 35. Or another thing you could do is, if you go in here, let's say you want to do some noise stuff here, for example. So you could use the noise, and you can, for example, select either simplex. You could use some values here to make that a little bit larger, like this, and then use the where is it? Where do you have it? I can't see it right now. Here we got here, and then you can use the seed of that noise to create different islands depending on the noise that you have chosen. Also very nice. Also a really good approach to do that. You could use a different noise, like for example Perlin. And if you want to do coastal regions, then you could, for example, just remove here the frequency slightly, and increasing the amplitude and the noise strength. So that way, we have here, we need to adapt the a little bit the, you can see that here, the shore. Regarding this one, yeah, we should make it a little bit like this. And then you could use these values here for everything to create coastal lines and all that stuff. It's just, this is. I mean, there's so many possibilities to do that. It's really incredible. Smaller frequencies also mean that you would have. Here we go. Let me check that one. That's what we could do. Oh, that's really crazy, right? That's really interesting. So many possibilities basically. Oh, this would be like a coastal region. Also very nice. And it actually feels like a little bit like moving on a large world map. Feels a little bit like that. Okay, so however, let's go back to the mountain range. I think seed number 35 looks amazing, so we keep that. And let's start with the next part where we're going to add materials. Okay, now let's head on by adding materials and colors to our terrain. But I think I just forgot something, because I think we could add a little bit more detail to this terrain. And I'd like to show you one more thing by adding a debris simulation. So click here on simulation layers, go to debris, add that one. Let's make sure we're not coloring it with anything else. And now for the debris, look at this. What we could do is, I mean, this is just an example. I'm going to adjust it a little bit further on. Now look at this. It adds simulated rocks and everything else. You can even select the texture, or you can choose a model even, and what kind of debris it should, I mean, what kind of shape that debris should have. And let's adjust it a little bit. So I want to make sure that we have a high acceleration without quite high friction and with ultra high detail starting point at first. And let's reduce a little bit the size. So let's make it like very low sizing here. Maybe something like this here. I think that's pretty good. And that way we've just added pretty cool things here. So this would be without debris, and this here with debris. Let's turn off the water. You can see all these small pebbles here. These could be like smaller rocks on the terrain. You could easily push this to a total maximum. Like if you enable the unstable density here, you can push that value to a really huge amount. It would look like that. So, but I don't want that, so I'm keeping the original value like this. And yeah, I think we should continue with this kind of shape. More debris will be added then through objects that we're adding in the third part. Okay, now let's examine how we can do material things on top of our terrain to color it. So we have this material folder here, and with the plus icon you can add colors, gradients, or textures, or even texture packages, which are basically just a zip file, so set archives. You can also add substance materials and this contours material, which is the case with this one here. So I'm going to disable my water, and I'd like to add a full ground global material, which is like a blending between sand and vegetation. Now to achieve this, the best choice you can do is to select a gradient material. Now let's add the gradient, and let's remove that contours. Now currently don't see the gradient, it's just all blank white. But if you open it up, you can see there are two distribution possibilities. The first one is a gradient distribution. Now this tells World Creator how to interpret the gradient. So is it a height gradient? Should the gradient be applied using the slope values, the slope bendings, and all that? So this is the first one, telling how the gradient should be applied on terrain. And the second one, the distribution, is used to tell World Creator where on the terrain the gradient should be applied. So we're not going to touch this because we want the gradient to be applied all over the terrain. because it's a global ground color for everything. So we're opening that folder here. We click the plus icon. And since we want to apply that along the height values of that terrain, we're using a height gradient. Now you can see what World Creator does. It does a full mapping of that gradient along the elevation values of our terrain. And we can adjust this easily by moving these sliders here a little bit, and we could also, we could also recolor it. We could add more colors by double clicking here and all that things. Another option is if you're clicking here that presets that presets button, then you have some of really nice predefined gradients that we've created for you. So I'm going to choose this one here because what I want is something like a sand up to a blending to vegetation things. You can see it's currently completely inverted, but there's luckily an invert toggle here. And as you can see here, all these fine streaks and lines here, this is about the gradient detail. So if you disable that, you will exactly get that without those detail lines. If you enable it, you have a lot of possibilities to adjust those detail lines as well. So doing like for increasing the shading strength, you can even offset those. That's a pretty nice feature actually. So, but we don't need that right now. So we just disable it. And let's see if we slightly adapt it a little bit. So what I want is the vegetation should start along these height levels here. So I'm going to use that here, like this. And yeah, I think that's it. We don't need any more for this global ground color, but we're gonna call this also global ground. So this is enter global, which means that if we add further materials and some of those materials are masking the terrain itself, and we might miss specific parts due to the masking options, then this ground color always will come through. Okay, so the next will be I like to add a some sort of a shoreline maybe. That would be pretty good. So adding a shoreline means that we have, oh wait, before we do that, let's just simply create a sand material. So a sand material we can use and color it depending on the sand that we have. So let's take a sand, which could be like this one here. I just drag and drop my material from outside. So it's that tie rippled sand texture here. You can see that looks a little bit strange because by default displacement is enabled. So let's just disable that. And now let's place our mannequin down here, and we can see, well, the texture is way too small compared to our feet of a mannequin. So let's increase that a little bit. Let's see what would fit good. I think 7 is good. Yeah, let's stay with 7 here. Let's move out. And you can here see that there's a pattern visible in World Creator. So if you want to get rid of that, just enable that stochastic distribution by toggling it on. Now the next thing what we want to do is we want to make sure that, let's first rename this as a sand. We want to make sure that this sand material is only applied where we actually really have sand on the terrain. So we just drag and drop this sand simulation and drop it here over sand material. Now it's just clear, okay, this material is going to be applied only where the sand itself was really applied on the terrain. Okay, so now let's head on. We need some shoreline. Before we do the rocks and all that stuff, let's go for the shorelines. The shoreline should be like anything that is here starting, let's say everything below the sea level, because we just put that material below the sand material and then go up a little bit along the shoreline up to a specific height. So what we do is the very first thing, we're using another texture, but we drop that below the sand material like that. Let's just give it the same tile size and also enable stochastic distribution. Now you can see that has been applied all over the terrain basically, because it goes above the global ground color, and it basically is also below the terrain, but it's completely overridden by the sand because the sand is above our beach land. So we call this here shoreline, like that. And now what we want to do is limit it a little bit. So best is to use, in this case, the sea level and adjust that, like go down to a maximum. And now slightly, just very, very slightly, because we need to check that. Let's enable the heat map, go a little bit upwards. Okay, so that would be like, let's enable the water. So here's my water shore. So if I set this to 0, I'm just exactly above that shoreline. And now I'm going a little bit deeper, not too much, basically. I don't want to go too much. Or we could even use a blending. So maybe that's even better if we do it like this. Let's set this to 0.3, like that. Okay, so now what we have here is we're having the shoreline across these ones. So it comes like that. It comes from the sand here, from the water. It goes upwards. We have a little bit rocks on it, right? And then it goes up. And here it's not longer applied, but at this point the global ground gradient is used to color it. And what we now want to do is we also want to color everything above that. Okay, so basically what we need to do is, because that's would be the vegetation part where we later put on trees and all the things. So let's give this a texture and use this, and apply the material here too. So we need to make sure that it's above the shoreline but still below the sand. That would make a lot of sense. So let's see, what we could use for that. I have a couple of textures here. I'm using a forest floor texture now. I put it above the shoreline in this case. I call this vegetation. I'm adjusting a little bit the tile size too, enabling stochastic distribution. Now this is how it would look like. I think it fits in size. And now let's go in, let's copy the sea level here, just drag drop, put it into distribution. Now it overlaps, because it's a copy, it of course overlaps our shoreline. And let's adjust this. So we had a value like, which was it? It was, I think it was somewhere here. No, wait. Let's enable that one. Let's go a little bit higher. Oh, we need to make that. Let's go up to a maximum value here. This is everything that is above that, and let's adjust that slider here. Okay, here we can go. So we can easily touch that like this. And now we could do a little bit blending here. Not too much, just very, very slightly. And we get something really cool. I like that. It looks like as if it would fit perfectly. Okay, now we have that, and those parts here would be the vegetation basically. But you know, this looks a bit too regular, right? So it would be really great if you could mix in another one, and we easily can do that. So we just copy paste that. This would be my second vegetation, but I'm using a different texture for that one. So let me see. We could use that one. See how that would look like. Yeah, looks good, I think. Let me check. Yeah, it's nice too. That ground, it fits perfect. Now, how do we do that? By mixing these two so that they are mixed together. And that's really pretty simple. So all you need to do is go to distribution, choose noise, for example, here, and let's see what could we do. We could use a we could use a wave maybe. Now if you enable a heat map, you can see how the wave would actually work like, but you can see that the blending mask is way too how's it said? It's not that dense, so that so we clearly can see that new texture here. So the best is, if you enable the heat map again, go here to effects, give it a contrast, make that a very high value like that. Now in that case, you would slightly see a few things here. No, not yet. Okay, so we gotta increase a little bit the amplitude. And here we can see that that new texture is slightly coming through that. And if you watch it, you can see we have some parts here already where this new texture is becomes visible. So we just increasing a little bit more the amplitude value here. And now we have a mixing between that and the other textures. And it looks like they fit pretty well together. Yeah, and I like that. So we just could add another material and mix that in with a different noise to create even a better variation. But before we do that, or even if we do that, it's not really necessary now. I'd like to add and mask out rock regions here on our terrain. So I want to make the slope values here, for example, they should be more rocky-like, and we do the same technique by mixing two different rock textures and using a distribution which is based on the slope of the terrain itself. Okay, so the next one is we're going to add the rock. So let's go on with, I think I'll take that one. And still I'm doing everything below the sand, because sometimes you even might have rocks that are covered by a little bit of sand. So I just want to make sure that the sand really overrides everything, because the sand is a pure physical based material in this case, because the sand itself was created by physical reactions. Okay, so we take that rock here. Let's just increase the tile size again. Let's add stochastic distribution. But what we do now, we are using the slope. So we're trying to catch these parts here, okay? And that's also very easy. Just go to distributions, terrain, and slope. And if you really want to have correct slope values, like 35 degrees, set this value to a maximum, which is always 90, and do the same. Oh, you can leave that for the other one. And now let's just make sure that we really hit everything that is within a specific slope, basically. So let's increase that 90 degrees, and let's adjust that here. Let's check. I think that looks good. We could switch to the material mode, then we can see that even better. I think that is okay. Yeah, well, maybe a little bit more like this. Yeah, that's fine. I think that's okay. And now we'll stay in that rendering mode. We're just going to copy that again here and using a different texture. Now for that next thing, let's get that one here. It's this one here, and we're using the same technique by using a noise as we did with the vegetation, basically. So we could also just copy paste the wave here, the wave noise here too, and see how that would look like. You can clearly see how these now are mixing up. Let me see that from a further point of view here, if I like that. Well, I think it's not too bad. maybe a little bit more. More or less. Well, that's always just a little bit kind of personal how you would like that. So I think that's okay. We can stay with that. Yeah, I think that's fine. That looks not too bad. Okay, and now let's do something really cool. Let's enable the displacement, and then we can quickly get this to a really nice looking one. Okay, so with displacement enabled, we can easily make these rocks looking really, really cool. So let's just increase that a little bit here, like that. And same for this. So we make that really rocky now. That looks cool. And let's adjust the other ones a little bit. So I think for the sand, let's check the sand first. So let's go into sand here. I think that's a bit too strong, so let's reduce that. It's way too strong. Let's take the other one here that we have. So that was the shoreline. I think don't make that too strong too, I think. Something like this would be just fine. Now let's check the vegetation things. We could actually increase them a little bit. But not too much. We don't want to have ugly artifacts. So I think that's really nice. Blending looks good as well. Yeah. Okay. Let's stay with that. So this is not bad. So actually, if we enable the water, that would be how our terrain would look like currently. And I must say, I really like it. What else we could do to maybe add a bit more like dirt in the water, or things that collect up across these lines here, typically, is by adding a I will quickly show you how we could do that easily. So I'm going to use a color now. Later, I mean, I will replace this later with a texture, and let's call this dirt flow, something like that. And for that, we have a pretty nice distribution. The very first thing is that we add the cavity for that. So we're adding the cavity value, so we get that dirt all inside. And we make sure we're using a very low step size here. That's cool. Well, a little bit more maybe. Be careful with the threshold. I think that's fine. Maybe reducing the strength also a little bit. We'll see that. And what I don't want is, I don't want to have dirt here between. So actually, well, not sure if I don't want that. Doesn't look too bad, basically. No, I will cut this. So I think I just want to have that dirt below the sea, below the no, how is it called, the sea level. Okay, so I'm adding here a distribution again. Let's call it sea level here. Go to a very high negative value, set this to 0, and so we'll start here at that point, but I don't want to start it directly here in the sand, because I want to make that sand looking a little bit more like sand and not like dirt. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper with that. So let me check. Oh, we need to set this to 0. Yeah, oh, here we go. So it should start somewhere around these parts here. So let me adjust it slightly. Okay, that's not bad, but you can see there's like a hard cut here. Okay, so I don't want that, so I'm using this blending here again, the blending slider, and that way we can smooth it out a little bit. Maybe even more. So a little bit like that. That's not, yeah, that's actually quite good. And now it looks like there's always dirt along the contours, right? So it gives a pretty nice detailed contours for the terrain. But because it's underwater, I want to make sure that it's also a little it looks like a little bit like washed off, okay? And so the best thing that you could do here now is giving this a special effect for the cavity, because this is created by the cavity itself. And we can use, for example, the small flow, which will then, as you can see that here, it's going to wash it off a little bit and moving it, right? So we still have the contours, but it's not that hard. And if we now increase a little bit, let me see here, if you're adding a little bit more strength, then we even get, you will see how that washed off effect would look like. And that's what I wanted to achieve, basically. I think that's a pretty good thing here. I like that a lot. That looks really nice. Really cool. Yeah. Let's enable the water. And we easily can see that. This looks really nice. Really nice. And we still haven't yet adjusted the renderer. So this will look much better in the next part where we're adding objects and adjusting the render so that the renderer looks really cool. Okay, I think that's it for the coloring. As you can see, if you just want to check if we really forgot something here on the terrain regarding masking, you could just use that one here and make that all red. And you can see that there are some parts left, slightly left, that have not been directly masked, okay? But because it's not always possible to mask it entirely, and probably don't, or you even don't want it, right? It's not a bad idea, and always a good practice to have a complete ground color that is coming through. In any case, something is missing, and in this case, because I've chosen a ground color that makes like from sand to vegetation, it actually fits. We might try how that would look like with a gradient detail enabled. You can see we're getting some contours here. It's very slight, and it looks really good. Even if we enable the contours, I think it gives a little bit more detail. Yeah, I like that. I like it how it mixes up. So I will keep the contours here. Let me see if I can a little bit adjust the strength here even. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's really great. So let's keep this. Let's keep this. Okay. So for now, what I would suggest, maybe what I could try, but I want to make this video too long. I personally would probably add a grass texture on top of the vegetation here, mix that in a little bit, and try to get a good result for this. I think I will do this in the next part while I'm trying a few things out, and if it looks great, I will put that in the next part. So, but for now, I think that's great. We got a pretty nice coloring for the terrain, a pretty nice coloring for everything here. It looks really awesome, really nice. So we just keep this for the next part where we're going to add objects to it. Okay, now, yeah, let's head on for part 3. Okay, so welcome back to the third part, and in this section we're going to populate our island or terrain with 3D objects. So I'm going to show you how to scatter this island, scatter some trees, some palms, some grass, some rocks here on the ground for the underwater scene, maybe also some corals and some fish, some sharks, and yeah, all that stuff to create a lively island. Okay, so let's start with the underground here. So I'm disabling my water, and I'm using now my Eagle browser here to select something that looks great. So we're going on with some cliffs and some rocks for the underwater regions. So I got some boulders here. Let me choose one of these that I like, or that it would fit very well. Okay, so go with this one. Let's try that one. So I'm drag and drop my object here. You can see there's many objects here. And if you select it, there's some options here that you can use. The first thing I'm doing is here playing around a little bit with the model scale so I can see how that would look like. And now what I want to try first is to scatter that all around here, that island, at specific slopes. So the first thing we can do again here, we are adding a sea level, adjusting that a little bit, nothing to the top, and maybe a little bit like this here. So let's go downwards like that, and let's move it entirely a little bit. So we're making sure that we're below the sea level, basically. Slightly below. That's all a little bit of play around and, you know, see what fits best and all that stuff. Okay, let me now choose a slope as well. So set this to a value like that. I want to just touch the very high slopes, basically. So we're going to anything like that here. Okay, and now let's see how that would look like if I'm scattering way more. To scatter more of these objects, just use the instance distance, which means each instance should have a low distance to each other. That way I really can spread a lot of these. And let's check the scaling maybe. You can see it's way too large, basically. So I think our best is I'm going back to the original value here. Then we have a scale range, which is also pretty cool. So it's a range slider for the scale itself. That way you can create different sizes. Oh, that was the rotation, I'm sorry. So we use that scale range here. Make it a little bit like that. And reduce the instance distance again. And I think it's also good to, if you go a little bit downward here. So let's do a blending like this. So we get to a point like that. But actually, I don't really like that rock. So let me check if I can't find something better. Let me see. What I want to do, I really like to have such flat things, right? So it should become a bit more flat instead of these kind of rocks. Let me quickly check if I can find a better one. Let's take maybe this one here. That would be great. Let's replace this. Oh yeah, we have to select it first here. Then just drag and drop my new one, and let's scale up on this sizing here. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's what I was looking for, right? So creating these flat rock areas around here gives it a pretty nice look, specifically here on the water. That looks cool here. These parts here, very, very nice. Just to show without and with some rock scatters here. I even like it. So I think I would just go with that. We could use a distribution scale, which would mean that if you're having a height map, like for example, like this one, then the scaling will also be reduced depending on the blend map strength. So if you check these rocks below here, and I'm going to enable that, the distribution scale, then these will get smaller. And you can see that here too, right? So I mean, this can be easily adjusted here by that's the wrong one, by changing this slider slightly. So that way you could a little bit adjust that. until you get the rendering that you want, or the amount of rocks that you'd like to have. We could probably adjust a little bit the slope here too, so give it a bit more. Giving a bit more rocks here. That's a bit too much. Yeah, well, I think that's okay. That's fine. Let's turn on the water. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's keep that. Now we could, let's call this shoreline rocks. That's cool. And now we could drop in some larger rocks maybe into the sea directly, like spreading all over here. Some sort of cliffs or something like that. Let me see if I have something different here. That looks good. We could try out a few, basically. Let me see. What would be great is maybe having something very spiky or so. That would be great. So, by the way, if you wonder what I'm doing here, so this is my asset browser here. So I'm checking the things that I could use. The scatter. I want to, yeah, these are not bad basically. So these are our mega scans here. We have prepared them as GLB files, which is just best for World Creator to read. Now that looks great here. Well, I'm gonna take that here. Okay, move that out, and let's just drag and drop this here. And now let me check if we could do. Let's first increase the scaling like that. And now let's make sure that we're reducing the density. So we don't need a lot of these, right? And we're taking the sea level again. So we're just taking the same distribution here, but with a slight difference because we want to make sure that it becomes also available here at very low parts. And basically, I think it's even better. It should not be directly here along the shore. So let's go a little bit deeper into the deeper sea areas here. Maybe something like that. Do this. That's great. I think that's okay. And now here we get them already. Here we can see them already. Looks not too bad. And now let's just scale it up a little bit. But reduce, maybe we could increase the distance. So we get a interesting kind of shape here too. You don't want to have too much of these basically. Very slight. Just a very few. Okay, so this is a trial and error until we get something that we like. I think that's okay. That's not bad. So let's keep that. And yeah, we could also play a little bit here with the values. So having different sizes, always good. Don't make them too large. And we could also push them a little bit into the ground. So like for that one here, for example, we could use the height offset slider here. Push that into the ground slightly here. Let's go back and let me see how that looks like. And play a little bit with the scaling here too. And maybe also with the rotation slightly. Let's check how that would look like. Don't rotate too much, just a little bit. Okay, so we have some stuff around here. We could add even more of these, maybe different rocks. So for example, we could just copy paste that one, use another one. Let's try that. How that. This is now also in the, oh, okay. Interesting. Give it a different seed number. And yeah, let's push that into the terrain a little bit too here, like that. And yeah, just reduce scaling. I think that's way too large. And make sure that we have a regular density, but or let's say a distance like that, and just remove a little bit of the density maybe. Or what also would be great if we just try to give it a noise. Let me see. So let's give this a purlin. I'm going to add a contrast. Go up here like that. And now for the purlin, so we can see that. Reduce slightly the amplitude. Not too much. Maybe a less frequency here. I think that's nice. Okay, that's good. And so we have some rocks around here. And now let's do some scaling here. Like that maybe. Yeah, looks good so far. Still underwater, that's great. Okay. Use a distribution scale, that way we could do a little bit more variations. And now this affects also by the purlin, so we could just play a little bit with the amplitude. Make it like this. And you can see that we're filling up the ground. Looks pretty good. So I will just leave this. And yeah, what's really nice now is about what if we want to add some further content, like smaller rocks around these larger ones. That's also pretty easy to do if you're having sub-objects here. You could, for example, drop in another object. So we have lots of these. And now there are a few which are probably very slow or very small and below that level. So the best you could do here is reducing a little bit the density. Don't overdraw it with these ones. Make the radius a little bit higher. That way we get a scattering around them. And yeah, we could do the same thing here for the scaling too. So we could scatter a few more of these. You could do a rotation like that here. We could also put them a little bit into the terrain, just very slightly, not too much. And that way we can add way more content to everything, right? So we could do the same exactly for these ones here too. And then we have a pretty nice controller, I think. So we could also just increase the density, for example, here, but reducing a little bit the amount, giving it like this here. It's also very nice. Doing like so. That's great. What I don't like is that we have that covered here, so we need to adjust that a little bit. So let me see, the sea level, let's make that a little bit below. Like that. And maybe doing something like this here. So we get some rocks around here. Let's make -6 and we put some rocks below that and scaling it upwards a little bit. So that way we get smaller rocks above and larger rocks below. Yeah, I think that's nice. Looks good. So we stay with that. And now let's go and head for the above parts here. So we could, for example, we could create a folder here, call this underwater. So that's all that is underwater. Put that down here. This one. And above sea level. And now let's do the land part. And for the land part, we are starting with the small objects first. So we're adding some grass first. That would be my workflow. So I'm starting with the lower parts and going upwards. And there's a reason for that. So I'm going to explain that shortly to you. So first, I'm going to choose a grass plate. And we got some grass fields around here, so I just need to see which one I'm going to take. So here we go again. So let me see. It's really hard to find good grass, right? It's not that easy actually. So we could try. Well, we could try something. I think we should start with something with something smaller. So I'm going to use a very small thing here. Oops, just got that bad here. Let's take this one here first. Put that up here. And let's disable the underwater for now, so we can just concentrate on the grass itself. We're making sure that it's all above the sea level. So 0, 0 like this, up to 10K. That's fine. Let's move in. We already can see some blades here. Let's reduce here that distance between them. Like this. Let's check the scaling itself. I think that's fine. Good to go with that. And you can see that we have it all around the beach as well, so we don't really want that. So we're going to check that here a little bit, finding a good value that really makes sure that it's not exactly along the beach line itself. So we need to fine tune that a little bit. I think that's pretty good here, and we could do a blending. Ah, that's too much. That's not enough. Let's find this one here. I think that's pretty good. And of course, we don't want that on the sand itself, because you can see that here, it's still on the sand. So what we do is we're using the sand simulation, drop that down here. And then for this, for the sand simulation, use an effect called invert. And that way, it just removed entirely from the sand itself. So it's really just where these locations should be. So we can easily check that if we're reducing a little bit the distance between them. Then you can see it's getting more green. We don't want to really cover everything with grass right now, because it's still, because we're going to add more of these, but different objects, of course. Now I'm heading for some larger grass. Let me try something. So I'm going to copy paste that first, put it like that, go in here, choosing another grass blade like this. And I'm going to make this, or we actually could keep that distance. That's not too bad. Let me switch to the material mode so we can see that a little bit better. And that's pretty high grass. But that's not the issue here. So we're doing some variations, slightly some variations, not too much, but a little bit, like this. And I think what would be really cool would be like if you're adding a distribution again here for maybe the let's try simplex, and let's add a contrast effect again. Let me visualize that simplex effect here, and let's increase the amplitude slightly so we get some patches of this sort of grass, right? So I want to create some real interesting larger patches, and some patches where it's just not available there. Okay, let me choose that, and now we clearly can see where that grass is really showing up, right? Now that's really good. I think that's really good. You can see these patches here around. It's really nice. And I think we're good to go with this one. Now, let's go on with the next one. I'd like to add some fern, basically. So I could use exactly the same technique. So I'm just copy paste that again here. Now we're getting at a point where World Creator is really creating a lot of objects. Let's call this fern. This is my let's call this, how's it called? Let's call this grass large, grass small. And now let's select the fern. I'm going to use a fern from Nature Manufacturer. They have some really nice ferns actually. So I take that one here, put that down here. And we need to make sure that it has a different seed, and also a different seed for the simplex. So just give it a random number. That way we're adding some ferns. You can see all this here. This is basically fern here, right? So let me put that. And it's, of course, I think it's just a bit too much fern around. So let's make a higher distance between these. Let's check how that looks like if I'm just going to increasing a little bit the model size. Fern is really huge actually. Okay, that's great. Now we got some green here. We got some grass. Maybe I think even the grass is a bit too much. So let's remove a little bit the density here. And let's make that slightly smaller. But just a little bit like this. Okay. And now, what's also very typical for islands is that along the border, basically, exactly along the border, where you have the trees, and before the trees are starting, you have some real huge bushes. So what we could use, or what we could do, is using the ferns as bushes, or by just adding our own bush, and see how that would look like. Let me check a little bit. So I'm going to try. Well, it's not really an island bush, I think, but if you just go for the visuals, that wouldn't be much of an issue. Or let me see if we can find something better here. I got some really nice models here from CG Axis, which I'm going to use for the trees as well. And basically, what we could use here, I think, in a kind of bush would be probably maybe that one here. These look great. So we could just try that and see how that looks like. So the idea is now the following. By again just adding that bush here to my objects, basically. Telling the system to use let me just disable the ferns and all that, to use again a sea level. That's our core for now. And now we need to find a good line. So the best is again here to enable the heat map. And now let me check if we could go up slightly here. And you can see that, okay, this would be my beach level here, right? So, okay, so we need to check a value that is a little bit like this. That's not too bad. That's pretty good actually. So we found something that looks great. So this could be my line where I'm going to add all these bushes all around along the beach, right? So if a human walks here, it goes down into the jungle like covered by bushes, then you have some grass around, and then all the palms and all the rocks are coming. And again, we don't want this the sand areas to be affected by that. So we're using again here, we just copy paste that simulation thing, put that down here, and that way we're going to make sure that it's everything outside of that simulation, right? Okay, so we already can see the line around for these bushes. So let's go ahead and reduce the distance here. Let's first check the scaling. That's important. Those bushes are typically pretty large. So I can make them a little bit like this. Do a different scaling, but not too different. So maybe something. Let me check. That's great. That's okay. That's nice. And now let's reduce again these distances between them. so we get really a really nice shoreline along these bushes, right? Along the beach side. So this would be yeah, that's pretty good. And now if we enable our rest, like these ones here, we don't need underwater basically, then we get something like that. You can see the fern is a bit too large, so let's adjust the fern here again. Do something like this. And we are getting really close to our final island, right? It looks pretty good already. Now the last thing that I'd like to add, or not exactly the last, but for the vegetation part, let's call this bush shoreline, are of course the trees. So now let's head on and select some nice trees here. We could start with a palm here. I think that's pretty nice. Or we could check these ones here. These all look great too. We could also use different trees. We could use anything like that here. But actually, I think that these look really great. I really like them. These are really some nice stuff. Okay, so I'm going to use that one and maybe also this one. So we could use both. Okay, so let's disable this grass small here and the grass large. We don't need it right now. Also the ferns. And let's drag and drop our new palm here. Let's rename this. And now for the shoreline again, we're going in here for, we're doing exactly the same. So we need basically the simulation, the same thing. We need the sea level. And we need to adjust that sea level. But that's really easy because the only thing we need to do is set this value to a very high number. Then we cover everything in here. And I think it's great if you do here something like, maybe like 3. Yeah, I think it was 3.5. Or let's do 4. Let's do 4. So it's like in here. I could do a slight blending downwards, so it's getting even better if you make it like a little bit, let me check, a little bit like that. Yeah, we need to adjust that a little bit, but we can try that first. Okay, now you don't see the palms now, so we're increasing the elevation of these height values. So we go in here. Let's check the scaling. Wow, I think I just nailed it. I hope it, I don't know. And because they are looking too uniform regarding the size, we're just adjusting the slides here as well. So we get some different sizes here. We could use also distribution scaling, which will, in that case, we could even try this here. Yeah. I think we should, if we use that, we need to adjust it a little bit, make it like something like this here, and play around with these values. And we also could let them randomly rotate a little bit, not too much, but you know, should just get some sort of variations. 20 degrees is 16 degrees is good, and stick them a little bit into the ground just in case it's not 100% right. So we got some trees now. Now we can see there's nothing below here. It's not much at least. So let's fill it up. And let's adjust the lighting a little bit so we can see these trees a little bit better. So don't worry because it's a bit too dark right now. We're going to enlighten the scene a little bit more. You can easily do that if you go to the render settings. There's a slider called sample rejection threshold. So if you reduce that, you can just adjust a little bit how the light should be used when it's all around the island. So basically, this is one option we can do here. I personally would also just reduce a little bit the softness here, because it's too much. Could also increase a little bit the sky strength for now, I'll leave it as is for now. So we got the trees in here. And because I want to have a bit more kind of variations, I think that's quite important. So I'm not going to in a full like that. So I'm going to create a less distance here. And then again, just copy paste that tree and use a different model with a different seed. Let me check. So we could use a larger model here, like that one. Oh, come on, it's loading. I hope it's loading. Nah, it's not really. Don't want to load it. You don't like that model? It's not that large, basically. So, okay, I'm trying something else. Yeah, let's take that one. I think the model file was a little bit wrong or something. I could just try that again. Let me see. I can't drag it out because it's not in the okay, that was wrong. Okay, so I'm using a different model now. Let's take this one. That's a pretty nice one too. And now what's important about is that I don't want models or trees to stick into each other. So the best you can do is, if that one is above the other one, there's an override radius. So if you're increasing that, you can see that it just removes everything below it, including everything that is below in that hierarchy. So it will remove the palm one, also the a bush around the shoreline, the ferns and grass and all that stuff, right? So play with that value until you find something that fits good. I think 1.5 meter is good enough. And that way, it's just going to make sure that we're not overriding existing trees, right? Okay, so here we go. Let's increase that to something like this maybe. So filling up the island. Looks pretty neat. And yeah, let's put in the grass and the ferns again. So we're covering up these areas. And now we could just go on and fine tune things, right? So if I go in here, also this is also a optimization trick. I mean, the cinematic mode is really good if you're having a really powerful GPU so that you can run it entirely in real time, even for the rendering. But if you're designing all this, I mean, I mostly use now the cinematic mode because I wanted to show you how powerful the renderer already is. But if you're just designing things, it's better to go to the material design mode. And that way you can, you have just much more control in it. It's much smoother and faster in rendering things out, okay? So that's just as a side note for you to know. Okay, so now I think I will increase the fern again a little bit and make the bush larger. The bush is larger like that. And I think because there shouldn't be fern much around the bush, I'm going to set this value here too. And for the fern, there shouldn't be much around grass around the fern. And the large grass could have smaller grass around, so that's okay. And now, just to make this populating a little bit better, we're reducing the distance between them here and between the larger grass so that we get really a full neat rendering. As you can see, because I'm using different models, I have different coloring here, but that's normal. So you can do that much better if you're using the proper assets. Another option would be like if you go to fern here. For example, if you want to adjust the color of this fern here, you could go in here, select the material, and then just, you know, slightly remove that and coloring it, down coloring it until you get something that looks a bit better for that. So we could use this. So you don't want to make it too. Yeah, I'm thinking that's pretty good. Now what else we could add? Those would be like rocks and all that. Oh, we don't need that actually, just removing it here. Yeah, and let's enable the underwater objects too. And we're getting really close to a really nice island already. That looks pretty good. But I want to have some rocks around, spreading here around the shoreline. Okay, so let's see. So let me just see. I want to use a different mode now because it's getting a bit slower on my machine as well. Let's go to Megascans and select some rocks that we can scatter. Let me see. Could be anything, actually, just for showcase reasons. I like to select something nice, but let me see if I can find something different down here along the beach. This is not bad here. Oh, these ones, these look great. I think these look interesting. We can try that one here. So again, let's drag and drop that object here. Let's increase that so we can clearly see it first. Here we go. And now it should be only along the shoreline, right? So not in the water, just directly along the shoreline. So again here, go to the sea level. We need to set it to 0. It starts at 0, goes upwards, maybe up to 1. That's a bit too much. Let's make 0.3 like this. That's okay. That's fine. Maybe a little bit below water. Like that. And maybe just a little bit like this. Then we can reduce even that value here. Down to that. Here we go. You can see these rocks. Let me check scaling a little bit. It's always kind of a little bit off. It's not that easy to have a proper scaling, right? Let's make it like this. And push that a little bit into the terrain, I think, because it's necessary, because this sand doesn't really cover with that. So we could also line that along the normal and see how that looks like. And then push it into the terrain. And we get stuff like this. And that's pretty cool. That looks really nice. Yeah. I like that. Oh, it's almost like perfect. Yeah. Looks great. Looks really nice. Looks really nice. Awesome. Okay. Now we got some rocks along the beach as well. Now it's time to add some. Let's drop in some rocks. Some sharks. Beach rocks. Let's call this beach rocks. And now let's do some random sharks. Okay. We got the marine. We go here to where is it? To fish. So we got some fishes around here. Where's my shark basically? I don't have it. Why I don't have it here? I think I have it somewhere on my. Oh, we could also place some starfish. That would be great too. Some corals could be placed as well. But where's my shark? I don't have it. I think it's just because it's somewhere here on my computer. Let me check. No, I don't have it here right here. No, it's not here. Okay, I don't know. I thought I've edited it, but just give me a little bit of a second. Maybe I can find it still here. Atlantic Coastal Cliff. No. Max 3, Nature Manufacturer, Cinti. Packs. No, it's not here. Okay, I thought I would have edited it to my editor. I don't have it. Okay, regardless, we can add some other fish, then maybe it's okay. Let's add some blue gill. I don't know if it's even in the ocean, but regardless, let's add that. Okay, so I'm going to add that object here again. That's my fish. Here we go. And now we want to make sure it's again below the sea level, basically, of course. So terrain, sea level, everything below. Let's switch to the other mode again to see that we have correct here. And let's increase the scaling so we can see that. And now move it downwards until we get it to some point where it would make sense, personally. Maybe something like that here. That's fine. And now we're going to, let's add that only to a specific, let's use another noise maybe. I think that's great. So noise, effect, contrast. Let's increase that one. And maybe something like that. That could be logically something where I would say, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, it's way too large. So let's reduce scaling back to 1. I think it's even too large again. Okay. Nah. That would be, yeah, that's maybe something more realistic. And because it's terrain, so we're using the height offset again. So push this up a little bit. Let's check how that looks along the water line here. I think that's fine. And now let's reduce the distance between them here. And you can see that we're having these fishes all span across the ocean. If you go in, you can find them. Here we go. Looks good. Really nice. Oh wait, I think I know where the shark is. I just let me check. Yes, here we go. I found my shark. Okay, so let's yeah, let's add that shark. That's really cool. Okay, let's go for the great shark, for the great white. Here we go with the great white. Let's increase the scaling for sure. Now we got lots of these. Let's remove the density. We don't need too much of these. Maybe just like that. And doing exactly the same distribution. And could be anywhere in the water. I think that's great. So let's put that above the water plane a little bit, so that it's not above the water, but it should be a little bit inside the water. Let me see how scaling is. Oh, we need to check the scaling. That's important. Else you wouldn't believe it. It's a monster shark. It's always like no, it's too large. So let me first go down here. I think it's still too large, but I think that is realistic. Maybe like this. Yeah, let's take that. Okay, so we're good to go with that. Put that a little bit above the height, so we're still in the water, and we could a little bit play around with that by making sure that this one looks a little bit out of the water, right? Like this. Yeah. Okay. So we got some sharks. It's not much, but we got some. Can increase a little bit the density maybe. So we can be sure that we have some sharks around here. Now, what else you could do is adding corals and all that. I'm not going to do that right now because I think you understand how the system actually works itself. But what I want to do now is by a little bit improving the rendering maybe, and see and also show you another things that you might be of interest while you work in World Creator, specifically for low-end GPUs. So the very first thing to improve the rendering is like specifically if a forest or if we are within a forest or something like that, then it gets a bit too dark because we haven't yet included an outer exposure for the renderer, nor do we have translucency included right now. I mean, all this is coming, but as said, this is a beta version of World Creator, so while using the beta version, you would have to adjust a little bit the render settings if you do want to do some real nice shots in World Creator directly. So the first thing is by reducing the sample rejection threshold. You can see if I'm increasing it, the rasterizer basically doesn't really let enough light passing through. So it means that each time it collides, it just throws back, and that way you're getting less light on the ground itself. So if you're doing it a little bit like this, you can easily adjust the rendering and lighting up everything. The next thing is, and you should be a little bit careful with that, because the more light bounces, the better the quality, but also the less performance you gain. So if you're increasing that way, you can see that you're lighting up the scene as well. Okay, no, and going upwards. So I think something around 8 is always good, and adjusting a little bit with these values here makes it pretty nice. Then another thing, if it's all about if it comes to performance issues, then you should also make sure that you have the pixels per frame enabled. So if you are if you have it at 1, then it means that every pixel on the screen is being directly shooting the rays. But if you're halving it, you get this kind of noise here, but the movement, everything is extremely fast. So there's no lag while you're moving around with this setting. So that's pretty good. If you're running on a low-end GPU, you can see that I can move in very quickly. I can even turn my camera very quickly. I can navigate around, find some spots, and all that things. And that happens really quick. Okay, so that's one another optimization. Then the next thing is, of course, if you're increasing the sun strength, the more light is getting into the scene, the more light, the better the quality. It really depends on what you're achieving. The sky strength could be further used to simulate haze on the terrain. So if you're moving out, you can see it looks different, but we're moving in. So that's one of these things. And if you want to have real sharp shadows, then just reduce the shadow softness. That way you're getting really sharp shadows. You can see here the line. And if you're increasing that, it's getting a little bit washed off. So it's getting softer, which probably might be also more of interest. Okay, so that's it for this quick tutorial for the beta version of World Creator. Now, also what you need to be aware of is that we've built everything depending on the sea level. So that basically means that whenever I'm moving my sea level here, the terrain itself will adapt automatically. Okay, so you can see that this island is going to adapt depending on the sea level. Everything is going to adapt basically. So the rocks will disappear if it's too low, the sharks might disappear, and all these things. The shoreline might look different because it's pure procedurals. I haven't used any manual placement here, so that way that's really cool, because that way you have full control over creating different islands with many different look. For example, we go here for the mountain range and we're choosing another seed. We get many more different island variations based on our setup that we have created, and that's really awesome. Okay, then thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you can create something similar and very nice. Now you understand some of the basics that are new in the beta. And we're going to make sure that we cover a lot more Let's Create videos and push on some more how-tos as well. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Have a great day and stay safe.